Okay, well, before we get started into that, though, Justin, in the last week since our last podcast, I've gotten 37 calls from realtors really complaining about you.
I don't care.
We know most of their names. We don't like them anyway.
It's not that we don't like realtors. I don't like people who seem to think that my services can be engaged with them for free. I hate that.
Welcome to Access Granted, a peek inside the real-life stories of physical security professionals. Now, here are your hosts, Justin, John, Ryan, and Brandon.
Welcome back, everybody. Here's another episode of Access Granted. I am Brandon, sitting here with Justin, Ryan, and John. Today, we're going to be talking about a national locksmithing bill a proposed bill that is going to, I'll let Justin, he knows a lot more about the codes and bills and things.
Well, it came to our attention through one of our professional magazines that we listen, and then online here through an article through Yahoo Finance, that an app called Keys app, I don't think any of us have really heard of it. I think I saw a booth for it in Vegas when we were there, is proposing a national locksmithing license bill, and he's worked with a couple state senators to build this bill to combat scammers and the predatory scammers that are out on the market that are really causing issues, not only through their use of Google, but also through their just poor practices and no skills. They are proposing that the Keys app, make a feature of their app, which would be available supposedly for free on the Keys app, for locksmiths to vet the customers to vet their locksmiths as licensing and to help combat that scammer market.
Unfortunately, locksmithing or security in general is a very broad, skill set. And you say, I'm a locksmith, and the only thing you've ever done is install deadbolts. Well, you might be classified as a locksmith, but that's just one small skill set that's involved in actually being a professional.
I think that with a national locksmithing license, that it would probably end up looking something very similar to what Illinois has, right, as a locksmithing license. And I'm not sure, from a completely unbiased perspective, that it would solve the scammer issue.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm trying. I'm trying to keep quiet kind of on this one because I have a certain opinion on unions and bills and government in general.
No, don't do it. Be honest. I think if it hurts us in our business for us being honest, then we didn't want that customer.
So, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of unions, period. Yeah, they may have done something great back when, but what they have been corrupted into now is just terrible. Private sector union, you can do whatever you want, but public sector, firemen, teachers, all that stuff, not being able to fight for their own wages and not being able to be fired. Like we were over at, a trucking company that had a man just laying on the floor on a cardboard in the middle of the day taking a nap. And when we talked to them about it, they just said, "Oh yeah, he's union. He's not certified in anything else. We don't have anything to do, so there's nothing we can do about it." I'm like,
so it's kind of like daycare. I mean,
it's like you don't have anything to do, so you just get to sleep at work. Like, what kind of shit is this? And just things like that. So, but as far as like a national, I'm with you. I don't know how much it's actually going to do. With scammers and like Reagan said, anytime the government says they're here to help, you just kind of your ears perk up a little bit. Yeah, it's like I don't know if you're here to help me or here to help you or just try to take control over something. I'm just not a fan. So I have been just kind of sitting back and listening to this one a little bit.
Well, I think that with anything that the government puts their hands in, it's going to cost more. It's going to. It's going to be a policing and regulation and cause a higher level of entry into the field. What we don't want to do is locksmith is a small industry as it is for those people who are technically qualified, and getting people into it has been historically difficult, is to cause the bar for entry to be so high that the industry dies or it gets moved on to somebody else. Well, like we've talked about before, in the late 80s, early 90s, the locksmithing industry gave the access control market away to solely the electricians when they historically had it, and alarm industry too. I don't want to have a licensing be the reason why the locksmithing becomes a carpenter's union.
Well, but the fact of it is, Illinois is a $500 entry fee for your license. Now, there are a lot more things you have to do before that, but it's $500. If you cannot afford to spend $500 on your livelihood, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it in the first place.
I don't disagree with that.
I would say it's not even so much paying for a license. It's just what the regulators behind that license and what they're going to require of you, and what their standards of what they're going to.
We can argue that, but at the same time, there needs to be standards in our industry because we have the scammers, because we have all these other things. We need to have people who are trained to a certain level. I mean, you don't bring an electrician into your home who is not trained to a certain level. You don't bring a plumber in. Yes, there are a lot of people who can do plumbing, but that doesn't mean they're certified to do it, nor are they going to do it correctly. So, so Illinois requires us to have 20 hours of basic training in locksmithing. That's nothing. And if you cannot spend
it's literally half a week.
Yeah, if you cannot spend that amount of time and so forth, then I'm sorry. You probably shouldn't be a locksmith, or you shouldn't be a security. So right now, personally, I carry the locksmith license, I carry the alarm license, and everything, and all these others. These are all things I have to be trained in. And it's all things that I'm licensed with the state of Illinois. No. So I don't have a problem per se with the licensing. I don't believe we should have a federal license.
Well,
I think each state should have to do it.
I don't mind even having a license and even maybe a state license, but the license should be issued through an organization that knows something about it and not a bunch of government officials who don't know anything about it.
I would think it'd be fair to say that the individuals around this table are fairly libertarian in the way that we just don't trust the government to be able to
not at all
to be able to manage this in a way that would actually help the prevention of scammers. Yeah. I do think that a standard is necessary, but I don't know. Again, I'm probably the most libertarian here at the table. I don't think that it is any form of the government's way to hold that standard. I can see the need. I can see where the idea of the licensing could be performed well. I just don't know if it's practically able to be done so. And I don't see any difference between Iowa and Illinois because we're on the border here and the juxtaposition of Iowa versus Illinois, where the difference is and where Illinois has benefited Illinois consumers for good, whereas I see the Iowa consumer and the Illinois consumer being both as susceptible to scammers as the other, and good locksmithing and poor locksmithing. At this point, the licensure from the state has done nothing but add a fee to the locksmith. Now, I don't disagree with the fee.
Which is a fee that I wanted to kind of jump in when John was talking, when he said, it's $500. If you can't support that with, your own business, you don't deserve to be doing business, which I completely disagree with, because for the state and the government, that money means nothing to them other than, that's just what it is. And if you say something like that, they're going to say, oh, well, then it can be $1,000. That's just a starting point. Yeah. And then, next thing we know, we're going to be paying $2,000 for a license.
Well, that's what I was.
Well, it's because it's $500 per state that you would service.
Right.
Right. That's what it comes down to. And then they just use that to the bottom line. Right. And it doesn't go towards schooling. It doesn't go towards anything.
Exactly. And like I said, in true government fashion, we're going to start off with a great concept. And then in 20 years, we're going to completely blow that concept out of the water and make completely new regulation. It's going to be more of a control factor rather than we're here to help you. Now it's here. Like Ryan said, well, it was $500. Well, if you'll pay $500, you'll pay $1,000. And anyone dumb enough to pay $1,000 will pay $5,000.
But the point of it is, when the state is doing the licensing, the cost of the licensing should not be any more than what it costs the state to implement that.
Well, that's bloated and inflated no matter what you do. I think it would be interesting to have Justin/Jason give us his opinion on whether he would prefer to buy from a locksmith that's licensed or unlicensed, or if it matters as a consumer. Justin, having only ever been on the peripheral edge.
And what's Jason looking for? Is he looking for commercial or residential?
Well, that's the question on either end. he knows now more about locksmithing than he ever would have thought he would need to since starting to work with us through through TAG. But I think it'd be a nice input here to see whether it affects him, and if he could maybe separate with the information he has and maybe throw back to what he would have known before 5 years ago.
Well, I don't know if this is exactly answering your question, but what was coming to mind as you were talking about government regulation, I thought, well, are there already organizations or certifications that you can voluntarily subscribe to that would help the consumer realize that even though it's not a requirement, you're voluntarily subjecting yourselves to a set of standards so that I can feel reassured as a consumer? Do those things exist, or would you be open-minded to an organization like that?
Well, they definitely do exist on the peripheral edges and straight up in locksmithing with ALOA or other locksmithing associations. I think the big issue there is I think all associations in this point do a poor job at marketing themselves as the leader of those people who know what they're doing. Right, ALOA, which is the Locksmithing Association it used to be the American Locksmith Association, the Associated Locksmiths of America. Now it's ALOA Security Professionals. They've changed their name to try to encompass more people who fall under the security blanket. Does a very poor job at marketing themselves to anybody other than a locksmith. And even then, I think they've done a poor job historically marketing themselves to locksmiths.
But with that being said, when you talk about volunteering, to do it, all of us sitting at this table have, before even looking at licensing, have sat down for ALOA's registered locksmithing test, which is a 300-question test to verify whether or not we actually have a general basic knowledge of locksmithing. And we've all sat for that test and passed it. So, yeah, we do participate in that, and we do show people that, hey, we are moving forward, we are learning, we are, part of this.
And I think there are other groups, say like NASTIF, that we're members of to get car stuff, and that shows that if you're a membership, they do a background check, that you have some sort of validation that you may or may not know what you're doing. And then you have ADAM on the automatic door spectrum, and then you have NASTIF and not NASTIF. You have ESA and NISAT that are groups for the electrical portions.
Right. So, we sit around here and, we talk about ESA, which is the Electronic Security Organization. We also we belong to that, and we're, Cat 1, Cat 2, which is Certified Alarm Technicians. So, we and all of our people have to be registered and, take certain courses, to keep up with that.
I think the big issue, though, and it comes back to, is marketing on the side of the association. I think the unions have done it. If the association would be the answer to this question, I don't think an app that has no business in locksmithing other than trying to be a middleman should be the facilitator of a national locksmith license, other than the fact that it might be able to push its app to consumers via the U.S. government. And I think that's exactly against the Constitution. They cannot require that app to be something that is a law. Healthcare disregarding.
Yeah. Well, we won't even get into those years, but.
So if we sit down and we say, okay, the state is going to charge me $25 for my licensing fee, but one of the things I have to do is I have to belong to one of the associations and be certified through the association for the trade in which I'm applying.
Like I said, that's pretty much what we're doing now. We get certified through a different non-governmental organization. I feel like once you have to start getting certified through a government agency, that's where down the road, maybe even the first few years, everything will go well. But we all know how as soon as the government gets their claw on something, they got their fist up you in a matter of
with us being
years.
Businessmen and the proclivity of not wanting the government to take more and more of the hard-earned money that we have, I think that it is a kind of a bad word when they say a national U.S. Federal government-run licensure. I don't disagree with the need for us to, like Justin said, put out there that we're certified and we know what we're doing. The problem then being is we've even taken classes where it seems like the certification, that paper that came with it, and this Institute of Locksmithing, was just something somebody's put together in his backyard.
Just made up
And
that day.
they found a pretty border on online and then just made their own.
And it's just, I guess the biggest issue with something like this is I'm not opposed to holding the industry as to a better standard, and I'm not opposed for us trying to be the leader in that or being someone that's in that licensure. I just don't think that it's practically able to be done with the federal government, and I think the groups that are available currently need to be rehauled and take some pages out of other groups like the unions or the bigger associations to probably make that happen. And I don't think it would be as big of a deal if the industry or the associations took more of a proactive role outside of just education to marketing themselves to the American public.
When I look at it, think about it this way too. What is a residential house around here has a knob and a deadbolt. California, relatively the same thing, but you may have a wrought iron gate on your door on most houses. You go to New York, you have 6 different locks on an apartment door. So what is the standard, especially when the government comes?
Well, yeah, and
involved?
then who's going to hold that standard? Is
Yeah.
it the Building Housing Association?
Yeah, exactly.
Is
So
it
could be HUD.
fire code?
Yeah.
Is it life safety? And we have to do all of these things. And the question then is, what other pieces and fingers in the pie are going to be there when the federal government takes it to make this almost impossible for us to maintain? And I think, I truly think that it's the association that's going to have to do this. And other than us working within the organization itself to do it on our own and volunteering, I don't think it's going to happen.
Right. And to Brandon's point, if the people making up the rules for the federal or for even for a state, if they're all from one single area within that state or that within the federal government, then you're going to have rules that don't necessarily apply to someone in the Midwest or apply to someone in Montana. We barely lock our doors in Montana, so why, security's a whole different ballgame.
Oh yeah, and we already have that in the building industry where, in certain areas of New York and California, that house is required, if it's being built now, to have a fire alarm or a sprinkler system in some cases, even if it's a residential house. And they've stepped themselves in there. And it is for the idea of protection. Those of us who have bought houses and, everything else, one more finger in the pie, even for protection, sometimes does get aggravating. And I guess that's where I come from, where I'm just like, I don't want any more government fingers in my life.
Yeah.
Right. You start talking about adding a sprinkler system to a home, depending on the size of the home, it can be $60,000 to $150,000 additional cost.
Oh, absolutely.
And that most of that cost is not from product or anything else. It's for them having to maintain training and licensure and getting it certified with the government. The government has come in and put themselves in that industry, whether right or wrong, and has caused that industry to balloon in cost.
Right. You are not my daddy. My daddy's name is Joe.
But do I think it's a bad idea? Honestly, yeah, I do. I'm disagreeing. I sent a link to Ryan and Brandon a couple days ago where we had other locksmiths on YouTube debating the licensure.
I love this. Both of these guys debating this are probably in their 40s, 50s, or older, and they're like, I've been in the industry for 9 years. Like, I'm 30, and I've been in it for 17.
Well, you're not 30. You want to be honest about that?
Well, I'm in my 30s.
No. You're on the back half of your.
You
of your
did
30s.
just hit 35.
Yes, I am 35.
So yeah, let's just get this straight here. You are almost a 40-year-old man.
Now, with that being said,
Might as well be 40.
I don't know if that's right of us for us to judge individuals who are passionate about it, but I did. I instantly judged these two individuals. And
I'm a judger. That's what I do.
Let
I'm a
only
judger.
God judge those, right? Let only God judge. But they're like, my favorite part of locksmithing is residential. And if you're worried about a residential call and licensing for a handyman who could do your job.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And I don't know.
Well, and that's the other thing. Do handyman now have to follow under this?
Exactly.
If they're not a registered locksmith, do handyman now have to follow the locksmithing?
And this is the thing, is that guy was saying,
laws
oh,
of
yeah,
the
we got to fight the scammers. We got to do this. But now what you're doing is inviting the federal government to come into your house and say, you
vampire, don't do that.
can't replace that. It's like the city now requires you to have a permit to replace a water heater, which is 2 wires and 2 pipes that are threaded on.
Yeah.
Right? We've invited them to do this by allowing them to regulate the industry for protection. And the question then being, is it the responsibility of the federal government or is it a personal responsibility? I would fall under a personal responsibility.
So let's get back to the main premise here is about scammers. How do you think that we should fight scammers? What can we as an industry do to stop scammers?
The way we fight it, I'm biased in this thing because it's only happened 10, 15 times in the last 10 years that I know of, that we're aware of in the Quad Cities. It is happening more so in the bigger cities, whereas locksmiths are seeing their entirety of their lives being withdrawn because they've had a poor marketing strategy, or they don't have the longevity in business to draw the business without a Google review, and it's causing issues. I really do think that the way we combat this is through a strong agency or association-led marketing campaign that allows them to see that associates the association with quality.
Let's look at that then. So what should people be looking for when it comes to trying to identify a scammer versus a true brick-and-mortar security company?
Okay, first off, if it goes to a call center and they quote you something ridiculous like a $45 service call on opening, that's going to automatically, more 99.9999 infinity percent, going to be either a very poor, the very small percentage is a very poor locksmith who doesn't know his own worth, or a scammer, right? What's the other thing they should be looking for? They should look if the number that it goes to a out of state number.
And the only thing somebody asks you on the phone is, where are you? What's your credit card number?
Right. I also agree that, when you're looking, is he wearing is the van
Branded?
Yep. Is his uniform branded, or is he wearing some type of branded, saying that, hey, I'm with so-and-so? If you called Tim and John's Lock Service, does the shirt say, I'm Tim and John's Lock Service? Does the vehicle say that?
15 years ago, we would not have followed that those quantities because our grandfather hated branded shirts because he wasn't going to pay for them, and he hated lettered vehicles because he had one customer tell him, "Oh, it's really nice that my neighbors don't know what you're doing."
So the 1 out of the 5,000, we took their word for it. But I could talk about the government pissing me off all day, but we do got to wrap this one up. So, like always, give us a call at 563-322-0123 or stop down at the shop and see us at 1304 West 4th Street, Davenport, Iowa.
Or at jjlocks.com. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for listening to Access Granted, a podcast by J&J Access and Security in association with TAG. For more information about J&J Access and Security, visit jjlocks.com.